The day was perfect. Osie looked like a queen in her gold and white dress. The garden was beautiful, filled with white lilies, golden drapes, soft music, and smiling guests. Everyone was there to celebrate her and Tobor's engagement. People were taking pictures, dancing, laughing. It felt like a dream come true. Osie had planned everything herself, and everything looked magical. She carried a tray of wine to serve the elders, just like tradition. Her hands were steady, her heart full of joy. Then, as she gently handed a glass to Mama Ida, her future mother-in-law, everything changed. Without warning, Mama Ida stood up and slapped Osie hard across the face. The garden went silent. Everyone stopped. The music stopped. Even the birds seemed to stop flying. Cameras clicked. People gasped. Some covered their mouths in shock. Osie's cheek burned. Her eyes watered, not from pain, but from shock and heartbreak. She couldn't understand what just happened. Mama Ida shouted, "You don't know how to greet elders! You didn't bow low enough!" Osie stood frozen, her hands shaking. She looked at Tobor, the man she loved, hoping he would say something, defend her, hold her, anything. But he just stood there, lips tight, eyes down, saying nothing. The moment that was supposed to be her happiest became her most painful. The smile she wore disappeared. Her dream had just turned into a public nightmare. Everyone was still staring. No one moved. No one helped. And in that silence, Osie realized something deep in her heart. This was no longer a celebration. It was a warning, and her life was about to change forever. Osie stood there, her cheek still stinging from the slap, her heart racing. She was in shock, unsure of what had just happened. The pain wasn't just from the slap. It was the hurt that she felt deep inside, the betrayal. She had always dreamed of this moment, her engagement day, surrounded by love and joy. But now, everything was falling apart in front of her eyes. She looked around, hoping for someone to speak up, to stand by her. Her eyes immediately turned to Tobor. He was supposed to be her protector, the one person who would defend her, especially in such a humiliating moment. But instead of rushing to her side, instead of showing the love and respect she deserved, Tobor stood there, frozen. His face was pale, his lips trembling as if he was unsure of what to do. Osie's heart sank further as he turned to her and quietly said, "Just kneel, please, for peace." It was like a dagger to her heart. Kneel. In that moment, she felt so small. She wasn't just being told to kneel. It felt like she was being told to submit, to accept that this was all she was worth. Nothing more than someone who could be humiliated and ignored. Tobor's words echoed in her mind, and for a moment, the whole world felt still. How could he ask her to kneel, to bow down to this treatment, just to keep the peace? Wasn't she worth more than that? Wasn't their love stronger than this disrespect? Her chest tightened with the weight of her emotions. She had dreamed of a future with Tobor, of building a life together, but in that moment, she realized that her dream was nothing but a fairy tale. The man she loved wasn't standing up for her. He wasn't protecting her from his mother, from the woman who had just slapped her in front of everyone. He wasn't willing to challenge tradition, to challenge the cruelty, to challenge the way his mother treated her. With a heavy heart, Osie turned away. She didn't want to cry in front of everyone, didn't want to make a scene. She quietly walked away, her steps slow and deliberate. Jolomi, her best friend, and Chinaza, her supportive aunt, followed her without a word, sensing the pain that was in Osie's heart. They didn't need to ask her what happened. They knew. The three women left the venue together, leaving behind the dream Osie had worked so hard to create. As they walked out into the night, Osie didn't look back. The laughter and music from the party faded behind them. The beautiful garden, once filled with joy, was now a place of sadness and loss. Osie's heart broke a little more with each step. The man she thought she would spend the rest of her life with had just stood by and watched as his mother humiliated her. And now she was walking away from the life she thought she would have, from the man she thought she loved. She didn't know what her future held, but she knew this. She would never allow herself to be treated that way again. The dream she had for herself, the dream of a loving marriage, of respect, of partnership, had crumbled in an instant. And from that moment on, Osie knew she had to take control of her own life. She couldn't wait for Tobor to stand up for her. She had to stand up for herself. The moment the slap happened, Osie thought it was over. She thought the nightmare was just a moment, something she could leave behind and move forward from. But what she didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. Hours after she left the venue, the video of the slap was everywhere. Someone from the party, maybe even a guest, had secretly recorded the whole incident on their phone. The video was uploaded online, and it spread like wildfire. By the time Osie woke up the next morning, the video was all over social media. It was on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and every news outlet. The country was in shock. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some sided with Osie, calling her a victim of humiliation, saying no one deserved to be treated that way, especially not in public. They called out Mama Ida for her disgraceful behavior, asking how any mother could treat her future daughter-in-law with so much disrespect. They used words like abuse, disrespect, and shameful when talking about Mama Ida's actions. Osie's supporters rallied behind her, posting comments of encouragement, offering love and prayers, and demanding justice. But there was also another side. A lot of people didn't see it that way. Some said Osie was being disrespectful by not bowing low enough to Mama Ida. They argued that in their culture, it was the bride's duty to show respect to the elders. They believed that Osie should have just obeyed, that she should have accepted the slap and knelt as her mother-in-law demanded. To them, Mama Ida was simply enforcing tradition, and Osie had overreacted. They called her behavior rude, entitled, and out of line. They accused her of being ungrateful, of not respecting her future family. It wasn't just a simple disagreement. It was a full-on debate that divided the country into two camps. As the day wore on, the video became more than just a viral clip. It became a national discussion. There were TV debates, online articles, and even public protests. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some women felt inspired by Osie, seeing her as a symbol of strength for standing up against the mistreatment. Others felt that Mama Ida had been wronged and that tradition should be respected. It was a battle between tradition and modernity, between respecting elders and standing up for oneself. Through all this, Osie stayed quiet. She didn't say a word. She wasn't interested in defending herself or entering the public fight. She knew what had happened, and she knew the truth, but she wasn't ready to speak. She had no energy for the noise. The backlash from the video hurt her deeply, but it was nothing compared to the betrayal she felt from Tobore, the man who was supposed to be by her side. So, Osie chose silence. She wasn't interested in arguing with strangers on the internet. She didn't care what anyone thought of her. But beneath that calm surface, something was building inside her. Anger, frustration, a feeling of powerlessness. The more people talked about her, the more she realized that this wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about a slap. This was about women everywhere who had been disrespected, who had been told to kneel, to stay silent, to accept being treated poorly just because of their gender or their status. Osie began to understand that this moment, this slap, wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symbol of something bigger, and she wasn't going to let it go. Although she stayed silent on social media, in her heart, Osie was preparing for something. She wasn't going to let the world think of her as weak. She wasn't going to let the world believe that this kind of treatment was acceptable. Deep down, Osie knew that her silence wasn't weakness. It was just the calm before the storm. And when the time was right, she would speak. And when she spoke, the world would listen. Before all the noise, before the slap, before the cameras and the whispers, there was a girl named Osie. Life had never been easy for her. At just 9 years old, she lost both of her parents in a terrible accident. One day, she had a family, and the next day, she was all alone in the world. No brothers, no sisters, just a quiet house and painful memories. After their burial, relatives passed her around like luggage. Some treated her like a burden. Others barely noticed she existed. She grew up with rejection, wrapped around her like a coat she couldn't take off. But Osie didn't break. Instead, she grew tougher. She learned how to survive, how to smile, even when her heart was tired. When she was 16, she discovered she loved fashion. She used to sketch dresses in the back of her notebooks, using her imagination to escape her reality. But design school cost money, money she didn't have. So, Osie began to make and sell beads. Necklaces, bracelets, anklets, anything beautiful she could create with her hands. After school, she'd sit by the roadside with a small tray and sell to anyone who passed by. Some days, she sold nothing. Some days, she went home with enough to eat. But slowly, she saved every naira, one by one, until she could afford her first class. Design school wasn't easy either. Some classmates looked down on her, calling her the bead girl. But Osie never let shame stop her. She showed up every day, worked hard, and learned everything she could. Eventually, her talent spoke louder than her background. She started making clothes that turned heads. Her designs began to get attention. Clients came, money followed, and respect. So when Jalomi, her close friend and sister by heart, sat with her after the slap incident, she reminded Osie of that journey. She held Osie's hand and said, "You didn't come this far to kneel for shame." And those words hit deep. Jalomi wasn't just speaking to comfort her. She was reminding her of who she was. Osie wasn't some girl who got lucky with love. She had fought, sacrificed, and built herself from scratch. She had walked through fire and come out shining. She had known hunger, pain, and loneliness, and still stood tall. So, yes, the world saw a girl slapped and humiliated, but that wasn't the full story. Behind that moment was a woman made of iron and dream, a woman who had earned every piece of her success, a woman who knew how to survive anything, including this. Osie wiped her tears and took a deep breath. She wasn't finished. Not yet. This was just the beginning of something greater. Osie had been quiet for days. While people argued online, while some defended her and others mocked her, she stayed silent. But inside, her heart was full, not with hate, but with strength. She knew the world didn't need more shouting. It needed truth. So, one evening, she sat down with her laptop, took a deep breath, and began to write. The title was simple, but it carried weight. To the woman who slapped me for being myself. Her words flowed gently, but they were sharp. She didn't use insults. She didn't call names. She didn't write in anger. She wrote from the deep place in her heart where pain had lived, but strength had grown. She began by talking about the day, how it was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life, how the garden was filled with flowers, laughter, and dreams, and then how everything stopped with one slap. Not just the pain on her face, but the pain of being treated like she was nothing, just because she didn't bow low enough. She told her story, not just of that day, but of her whole life. She talked about losing her parents, struggling to survive, working hard to build herself, and finally standing tall in her truth. "I did not come this far," she wrote, "to bow for shame. I am not disrespectful. I am not rude. I am simply myself, and I will not apologize for that." She didn't mention Mama Ada's name. She didn't even mention Tobor, but everyone knew. The message was clear, and it was powerful. Her words touched people's hearts. By morning, the letter had been shared thousands of times. Blogs picked it up. Big Instagram pages posted screenshots. Even international news sites reposted it, calling her the voice of dignity. People were crying in the comments. Some said they saw themselves in her. Others said her strength gave them courage. Celebrities reposted. Influencers praised her class. The same girl some had mocked days before was now being called a queen, a lioness, a warrior in heels. What made it even more powerful was that she didn't try to destroy anyone. She simply told the truth, and the truth was enough. That letter became more than just a response. It became a movement. Young women started sharing their own stories of being shamed for not acting small. Men spoke up too, saying they were proud of Osie for standing tall. Osie didn't just write a letter. She wrote history. In less than 24 hours, she reminded a whole country and the world that power isn't in shouting, it's in standing. And Osie stood so beautifully, the world had no choice but to listen. The internet could not stay calm. After Osie's letter went viral, people everywhere started talking. On TV shows, on radio, in schools, churches, markets, even in family WhatsApp groups, the same question kept coming up. Should a bride always kneel? Or was this just another way to humiliate women in the name of tradition? Some people were angry at Osie. They said, she should have just knelt down. It's our culture. Others strongly supported her, saying, kneeling is not the problem. Forcing someone to kneel when they are already respectful is wrong. Slapping her in public, that's the real shame. TV stations hosted heated debates. One side said tradition must be respected no matter what. The other side asked, when does respect turn into control? Social media was on fire. Hashtags like One Osie Speaks and Arnaman Respect is Not Abuse started trending. Women shared their own stories of being insulted in the name of culture. Some men also admitted that these expectations were unfair and outdated. Then something happened that surprised everyone. Chief Maku, a well-known elder with strong cultural values, came on national TV. Everyone expected him to criticize Osie, but instead, he shocked the nation. He said calmly, "I love our tradition. I love our culture. But I also believe in dignity. Respect is not abuse. You don't need to kneel to prove your worth. And no woman deserves a slap for how she serves wine." The studio went quiet for a second. Then applause broke out. Chief Maku's words gave many people the courage to speak the truth. More elders started to speak up, agreeing with him. They said tradition should be about love and unity, not fear and shame. The whole country felt the shake. It was no longer just about Osie's slap. It had become something bigger, a fight between old ways and new understanding. A cultural war had started, and Osie, without even trying, had become the face of it. After everything that happened, Tabor suddenly realized what he had lost. Osie was no longer just a girl he planned to marry. She had become a powerful voice, a woman the whole nation respected. So, he started trying to win her back. First, he sent flowers, huge bouquets, every single day. Red roses, white lilies, handwritten notes saying, "I'm sorry." Then, one morning, people heard his voice on live radio. Tabor was crying, real tears, begging for a second chance. He said, "I was scared. I didn't know how to stand up to my mother, but I should have protected you. I failed you, Osie." The radio clip went viral. Some people felt bad for him. They said, "At least he's admitting his mistake." But others didn't forget how silent he had been when Osie needed him most. They said, "He's only speaking now because the world is watching." Then came the shocker. Mama Ida released a public apology. She stood in front of cameras, dressed in a traditional wrapper, looking humble. She said, "I let my emotions control me. I apologized to Osie and her family. I was wrong." But the internet wasn't buying it. Most people believed she was only apologizing because the slap video had gone viral and people were angry. "This is damage control," they said. "She's not sorry. She's embarrassed." Through all this, Osie remained calm and quiet. She didn't post or reply. Until one evening, she agreed to meet Tabor. The meeting was quiet. No cameras, no reporters, just the two of them, and Jalomi, who stayed nearby for support. When Tabor saw her, he looked nervous and emotional. He apologized again, face to face. He said he still loved her, still wanted to marry her, but Osie looked at him with gentle eyes and said, "I came here to hear you, not to return." Her voice was soft, but her words were clear. She thanked him for the apology, but she had already moved on. She was no longer the girl who needed to be saved. She had saved herself. She had found her strength. And as she walked away, with her head held high, everyone watching knew this was not a love story anymore. This was a story of a woman choosing herself. Osie could have disappeared quietly. After the slap, the heartbreak, and the drama, no one would have blamed her if she hid away. But instead, she did something no one expected. She used her pain to help others. She started a foundation and called it Rise Without Kneeling. The name itself carried a message. It was not about fighting culture, but about refusing to let traditions be used as tools to shame or silence women. Osie's goal was simple: to help young women who had been emotionally abused, silenced, or disrespected in the name of respect. She began visiting schools, especially in rural areas, where girls were taught from a young age to never question adults, even when those adults hurt them. Osie listened to their stories, hugged them, cried with them. She gave scholarships to some. She trained others in fashion and design, just like she had once trained herself by selling beads. Soon, news of her foundation spread. She was invited to speak at universities, on TV shows, and at big women's forums. People began to study her story, not just as gossip, but as a case of courage. In classrooms, students discussed her letter and asked deep questions. Is tradition always right? Can respect exist without fear? How do we make space for women's voices? Even some elders who had once kept quiet began to speak up. They said, "We never knew how much damage silence could do." Some women who had hidden their own stories for years finally found the strength to talk. They said Osie had lit a fire inside them. She never bragged, never shouted. She walked with quiet strength. She said, "I'm not against our culture. I'm against using culture to make women feel small." Through Rise Without Kneeling, Osie gave out school materials, held healing sessions, offered mentorship, and created safe spaces for girls who were tired of pretending everything was okay. She told them, "You are not weak for speaking up. You are strong, and you don't have to kneel for love, for peace, or for your worth." Osie became more than a name. She became a movement, a symbol, a sister to many. What started with a slap ended in a revolution, one soft voice at a time, teaching the world that real respect lifts you up. It never pushes you down. Osie was once just a young woman preparing for her dream wedding, but now she had become the voice of so many women who never had the chance to speak. Her life changed so fast, and in a way no one could have expected. One moment, she was crying from the pain of public humiliation. The next, she was standing on the biggest stage of her life, the National Women's Conference. The crowd was filled with powerful women from across the country, women in business suits, in cultural clothes, in uniforms. All eyes were on Osie. When she walked up to the microphone, the room went quiet. She smiled gently, but her voice was strong. She told her story, not as a victim, but as someone who turned pain into purpose. She spoke about growing up with nothing, about losing her parents, and fighting her way through design school. She shared how that slap at her engagement was not just about her, it was a wake-up call for many women who had been suffering in silence. When she finished speaking, the whole hall stood up and clapped. The president's wife, who had been watching from the front row, walked up to her, hugged her, and said, "You are the kind of woman this country needs, brave, kind, and unshaken." From that day, Osie's life became bigger. Popular brands started reaching out, wanting her to represent their message. She didn't say yes to all of them, only to the ones that aligned with her values. Her Instagram and TikTok pages grew faster than anyone imagined. One day, she woke up and saw her followers had crossed 2 million. But it wasn't just about numbers. People listened to her. They trusted her. Young girls messaged her saying, "You gave me the courage to speak." Older women said, "Thank you for reminding us that our voice matters." And far away, watching from a quiet place, was Tobore, her ex, the man who once told her to kneel for peace. Now he scrolled through her posts with sad eyes. He saw her smile, her confidence, her rising power. He remembered the day she walked away, and he never ran after her. Now he wished he had, but it was too late. The whole world had seen her worth, and so had she. Osie was no longer just the bride who got slapped. She had become something more, a leader, a light, a voice that refused to be silenced. And this was only the beginning. Osie stood in her new studio, surrounded by sketches, fabrics, and soft music playing in the background. Sunlight streamed through the windows as she placed the final bead on her newest bridal gown. This was not just any gown. It was part of her first ever bridal collection. A dream she once buried under fear and people-pleasing, now brought to life with boldness and grace. The collection was called Freedom in White. Each dress told a story, not of perfect brides, but of powerful women who chose themselves. As she modeled one of the gowns for a shoot, people could see something different in her eyes. She was glowing, but this glow wasn't because of a man. It wasn't because of someone kneeling beside her with a ring. No, Osie was glowing because she had finally learned to love herself, to trust her journey, to embrace her story, with all the scars and strength it carried. The fashion world couldn't get enough of her. Designers reached out. Magazines begged to feature her. Brides everywhere were requesting dresses from her collection saying, "I want to feel strong like Osie on my wedding day." She had become more than a designer. She was a symbol of self-worth. Then, quietly, when she least expected it, love found her again. Not loud, not forced, but soft and respectful. He wasn't trying to control her. He wasn't asking her to shrink or kneel. He simply stood by her, holding her hand, lifting her higher. With him, she didn't have to beg for peace. It came naturally. And when he finally asked her to marry him, he didn't say, "Will you kneel?" He said, "Will you rise with me?" Osie smiled, because now every step she took was on her own terms.